Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mildra, and I'll be your gaming monk. As I've said many times, mecha is a man's dream. However, dreams can take as many forms as mecha can. In this case, the dream is a mecha RPG that leans more into apocalyptic affairs like post-PS1 Armored Core video games, while also being diceless. To quote Dodgeball, that's a bold strategy, let's see if it pays off for him. That's not to say diceless can't be done, but it requires a degree of finesse as a game designer to make work while still being engaging as a game. This time around, we're looking at Pilots of Calamity Tactics, the latest entry by Tyshawn Williams-McRoy, aka Journeyman Dev. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I have interviewed him several times, including for this game, and I was sent a review copy of the game to go over. As always, that will not play a factor into my assessment. I will note, however, that due to the game only being 44 pages, my usual review format is not what I'd call appropriate. So, housekeeping over, let's suit up and dive into this. Layout-wise, the game has easy navigation through bookmarks, even without an index. But I will note that much like Hexen Academy, I'm not the biggest fan of going into the mechanics before going into character creation. I've covered this before, but it results in throwing in concepts without the proper context. Sure, this isn't as crunchy as Hexen Academy, so it's not as big a deal, but I can't ignore it either. Other than that, I do enjoy the CRT monitor-like look to the page layout, but I feel terrible for anybody who's going to print this. Maybe a printer-friendly variant is worth considering. Moving right along, character creation is a combination of your choice of community, mech model, weapons, utility items, label, and your call sign. Now, of these, community and call sign don't have as much mechanical impact compared to the other parts. In fact, I think community maybe should have been more at the front to further establish the setting. But mech model determines your mech's broad archetype. There's 3 weight classes, and there's about 4 models between each one. Now, I do wish each type had a short description, but that's just me. The only description is on the weight classes, and some of the recommended builds for them. Regardless, your mech model will determine a set of around 3 or 4 features that it has, along with its starting hit points, damage reduction, size, and speed. Now for attributes, you have 6 points to distribute between load, radar, tech, and boost. Each is tied to a part of the mecha as well as the effectiveness of certain equipment. Load is going to handle melee weapons, radar is going to handle ranged weapon, tech is going to handle hacking abilities, and boost is going to handle movement. Now speaking of equipment, each mech gets 2 weapons and 4 utility items. The latter may only be used once per combat, though you can have multiple copies of the same utility item, which is good because there's only 4 utility items listed here. Lastly, label adds an additional feature to the mech, essentially a reflection of which post-calamity shelter the mech came from. Character creation is fine, but I question exactly why this had to go behind mechanics instead of the other way around, as mentioned before. I also think that there's a few spots that maybe could have used a bit more description. It's very slimmed down, very fat trimmed, but maybe too much fat was trimmed. Now, as mentioned before, Pilots of Calamity is a diceless game, and instead relies on an AP system of sorts for much of its resolution. However, this is less about a number of points to spend and more about a phase-based order of resolution, with a coin flip to determine whether the offensive or defensive side in an encounter resolves first. As a result of this is a game that is going to emphasize coordination in its encounters more than anything else. That said, most actions have an AP value of 1 or 2, so it's not as daunting as it could have been, and maybe a bit restricting because of the fact that AP is only 1 or 2. Now, when it comes to mission design, I have a feeling some are going to hyperfixate on this to say, not a real RPG, or something like that. We all know how grognards are, after all. This is because the mission design carries with it several maps for different mission types, as well as the built-in understanding that encounters are on this 20 by 20 board. In addition to that, the mission design carries with it several maps for different mission types: Standard, Control, and Siege. To some, this will give off the impression of a miniature war game. Now, personally, I disagree, but I do think the fact that mecha are the primary opposition can bottleneck things. I feel like this problem could be alleviated with scenarios that aren't control point based, or ones that allow for non-mech vehicles, i.e. things like tanks, to be used. All in all, Pilots of Calamity is a marked improvement over Hexen Academy in terms of strength of theme, but I hesitate to see it used in long-term campaigns. I could see it used for short bursts, but I don't think there's enough variety to sustain a campaign that lasts more than a few sessions. I know a mission pack is out there. At the time of this recording, I haven't read it yet. And while that could alleviate the problem a bit, my rules unfortunately mean I have to cover the core book primarily. Now at $5 on ttrpg, this problem is not as bad as it could be, but it's something to be mindful of. As such, I would personally give it a grade of playable. I really wanted to go with recommended, but the issues in book flow and the mission variety are the main thing that keeps it from crossing that threshold. Still, I do consider it a marked improvement, as mentioned before, in terms of establishing theme and in strength of mechanics. Stay frosty!
In nomine